Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Janizewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. How are you doing, Chip?
I'm doing great, Eric. How about you?
Doing fantastic.
And
We've
almost
been,
our first podcast because we haven't done one for a while, with me being gone for 2 weeks in California and you being gone last week. So I'll have to remember how we go through this again.
yeah, it's been a few weeks. We've been traveling around the country, not together, but yeah. So, what were you doing out in California?
Well, my wife and I's 45th wedding anniversary is coming up on July 1st. And every 5 years when we are on a five, we like to go someplace. And this year we decided to go to California for a couple of weeks, which is great. And it's a little bit ironic because this past weekend, which is after we got back, was my wife's 45th college reunion. And that's how quickly the wedding happened after she graduated. She graduated in May. We got married July 1st after that. So I was a cradle robber. She wasn't even 22 years old, but here we are 45 years later, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. So,
And still going strong.
yep.
Yeah, and I headed out to the Denver area. I was at a conference for multiple sclerosis. I'm chairman of the board of directors for the Support Info Go initiative. So we go out to this conference periodically, learning more about what's going on to try to stop multiple sclerosis and how we can help those afflicted with it. So that's what kept me busy.
Yep. And I saw your partner, Ray Charpentier, last Friday at a meeting, and he's looking great and he's just so inspirational. So,
Yeah, my partner actually has MS, but he has been drug free for, I believe, 5 years already. And he's got no progression, all due to diet, exercise, and, basically keeping up with treatments. So, yes, MS is not a death sentence. You do not have to end up in a wheelchair. You do not have to end up, losing control of your body. These things can be beaten, but you have to take the time to and put in the effort.
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it starts out with the positive mindset that Ray has. And our guest today also has a very positive mindset and has been through different things in her career. And she is now a confidence coach. And it's our pleasure to welcome Michelle Marin, the confidence coach, to our podcast today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your career, how you got from point A to point B, and we will continue on.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here with both of you. And it's been a journey, right? I spent many years in food service sales and more recently decided to take the leap and do coaching full time. And I was not raised with a lot of confidence. I can definitely say that. And, with a weak support structure, it was more of a, hey, you just kind of get by and keep your head low. And it just didn't cultivate my confidence, so to speak. But over the years, and then I found the positive intelligence program, I've started to build it, and I want to be able to share that with others.
Fantastic. So you say you weren't raised with confidence. How did that affect you, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I guess my coping mechanism was to become a people pleaser. Just say yes, be the good girl, and do all the things that keep you out of trouble. And that way no one's really ever, battling with you because you just don't get yourself in trouble, right? So, but you also don't get to have a voice. So that was the challenge. So over the years, I was striving really hard about getting an education and doing all the things that would hopefully build my confidence. And I realized that, wait, even though with all these accomplishments, it still wasn't quite there. And when I started using the tools of the positive intelligence program, it got me to see my inner critic, where I was being so completely hard on myself. And when I can start to calm that down, that's what made all the difference for me.
Interesting.
So tell us what the program is all about.
Yeah, it's a 6-week program, and it's based on an app. There's a book too that's called Positive Intelligence, but the program itself is where the rubber meets the road, where you're able to have daily many practices it creates a structure, and there's a simple structure, and then a weekly conference coaching call that goes with it to support it, and a weekly video. So with the structure and with the coaching behind it, it's teaches you to kind of restructure your brain a little bit, like how to calm your nervous system and to be able to get present in situations that might otherwise be challenging.
Nice. So, as someone who did not have confidence, and now you're teaching, yeah, how people can attain their confidence, and you've obviously attained yours. Can you describe what it's like for you, the difference between living day to day without that confidence and once you achieved it?
Yeah, and I want to say that the confidence isn't a puffed up, I'm great kind of confidence. It's more of what I might call an unconditional confidence, saying, hey, I might not have all the answers, but I'm willing to, do it anyway. For example, can I give you a little example of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so small story. I was wanting to have a difficult conversation with someone I was close with. And in the past, I would have just overlooked it, been the people pleaser. And instead, I decided to have the hard conversation. And in light of that, I felt my body getting nervous. All those things. Once I said the words, I just got quiet. And I waited, like, I just wanted to go in and make it all better, sugarcoat the whole thing, take my words back. But instead, I just sat calmly with the discomfort and saying that this is what's true for me. So with that, it was really empowering to be able to say the hard things and even do it, even though you're a little bit uncomfortable. So it's nice that it allows me to be different in the world, to be able to go out and put myself in new situations, to say no when I feel like saying no, to set boundaries. It really opens up a world of possibilities.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the power of saying no and putting yourself first. There's a reason when you get on an airplane, when they talk about putting the air mask on, they say, if you're traveling with a child, put your mask on first and then take care of the people you're with. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, there's that much less to take care of somebody else. And I think that confidence has a lot to do with that. You mentioned having a tough conversation, and those tough conversations are always seem to be so much worse in your imagination than they are when you actually have them.
Yes, this is a really good point. Absolutely. And what I think too is that when we put our own air mask on, so to speak, the world tells us we're being selfish instead of self-care. There's a difference. Yep. We can be a lot better in the world with our family, as a parent, all of those things when we have better self-care, and can lose that inner critic that tells us we're being selfish.
Yeah, you bring up the world, and that's what we're exposed to. I mean, as you both know, being a new grandparent, I'm just watching my grandchildren grow up and everything. And I mean, both of you know, when I talk about the first thing, when kids are born, when a child is born, all they have is awareness. They have no baggage, nothing going on. Then they learn, they hear words, they see their parents and so on and so forth. And they learn about the quote unquote world. And unfortunately, nowadays, even though it's always been like this, with being bombarded with social media and everything else all around the place and bad news, that world tells you the way that you're supposed to be. And people get hung up about that because they just pick out different things. And there's a zillion of them where they don't conform to the world. And basically, what your coaching is all about, what our teachings are all about, is getting out of the world and getting into ourself and our self-confidence. And that's really the way things really are. I think I've ran this by you, but I know I've run this by Eric before. I love using the example of the courtroom in your own mind. And I have a little diagram about this, and it's an empty courtroom. And you are the judge, you are the accused, and guess what? The jury chairs are absolutely empty. And the reason is because they're all in their own personal courtrooms too. Everybody's got their own hangups, worrying about what other people think about them and so on and so forth. and it really doesn't matter. All you can give to the world is your best self, that's exactly what you're doing, and that's what we're doing also. And that's the most important thing. I use a lot of quotes, but one of my favorite ones is, what other people think about you is none of your business. Number one. And the number two, don't take yourself so seriously. Nobody else does. Because
right.
they're all worried about themselves. So it's so cool to see you doing what you're doing. And I'm sure you are reinforcing that, because that's what needs reinforcing, is that person in the mirror who is the most awesome person there, where, I mean, we all came from the same wonderful source, and that's love. So got a person there for everything to work. So it's so cool to have heard your story and how you gotten from where you are to where you are now, and doing what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, what I love that what you point to is freedom, the freedom to be self-expressing. And I find that if I show up in the world with kindness and gratitude, how could you go wrong? How could you not have confidence when you're having you're taking good care of yourself, but you're also having kindness and gratitude for what shows up in your life?
Yeah, you're attracting it back. So
absolutely. And you mentioned kids, and I mean, kids are fearless. They don't know they can't do things. They believe they can do anything at all, and they'll try it. And then over time, we get beaten down to saying, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you're not supposed to do that. Oh, the system's rigged against you. You'll never be a success. And the naysayers just come on and on. And it's so important for somebody to be able to harness that confidence to say, you know what, maybe you can't do it, but I can.
Yeah, I have this little picture of myself. I'm about 3.5 years old. I have this funny little shirt. I think it has some spots on the front of it, like some stains. I didn't care. These little pajama pants, no shoes, my elbows up on the table, just spunky and happy, not a care in the world. And so in the positive intelligence program, we actually take a look at a childhood picture where we're under usually 5 years old and go, hey, what was that original self of ours that just lived, like you say, just we didn't have a care in the world. We weren't so fearful of everything. So it's beautiful to be able to look at that essence.
Yeah. And, this is just the way life has always been. Can't blame it on our parents or anything else, because it's always been like that as you grow up. I mean, people, because we have our own egos and consciousness, but we also have our own inner being. This is what takes over, because we're always trying to reason things out, the best way to do things, what's good and what's bad, and so on and so forth. That's not what we were meant to do, but as human beings, we do. When God created us with a soul, but also with an ego, he must be having a ball watching us. He'd be very, very bored if humanity wasn't humanity, as far as I'm concerned, because it's quite interesting to see what's going on. But what it is it's getting back to simplicity. Eric and I talk all the time about just the present moment, which I know I talked to you about it. And every single present moment is just a choice. And how you respond to that is your choice. And if you respond to it with positivity and encouragement to other people and so on and so forth, instead of letting all the perceived baggage that you have, which is really false anyway, dominate your life, that's what it's all about. And you start doing that, and people are going to see that in you, and they're going to be attracted to you. And for that one moment of interacting with you, it's going to be a positive experience for them too.
Yeah. And what I noticed when I think about, for so long, I was so involved in everyone else's business, what they should do, how they should act. And I'm really learning to free myself from that. It's arrogant, first off, for me to think I should know how someone else should live. But there's so much more freedom in my mind when I'm not concerned with it, that I just wish them the best. I'm here to help if they ask. But otherwise, I don't need to get so involved in everyone else's stuff.
Absolutely. We've all got enough going on in our own lives. We don't need to be worried about everybody else's. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the program? What are some of the techniques you use to help build people's confidence?
Yeah, one of them is my favorite, and it's just a matter of getting present, even if it's just for 10 seconds. It could be following your breath or rubbing your two fingertips together with such exquisite attention that you're full focus on just trying to feel the fingertip ridges. So there's these little techniques, or maybe it's just recognizing the eyelashes on someone's eyes when you're talking to them. these little practices that we get to become present to what's actually happening in our life right now. And that again calms our nervous system. But it's those tiny practices. I say the first and easiest one is just 10 seconds of noticing your breath.
Nice. It's a very common mindfulness practice. It's very powerful. And more people are realizing how important it is to be present. Mindfulness, you can find it everywhere now, but it really does affect people. When you're not worried about what's going to happen or what's the right thing for me to say next, when you're just listening to somebody, when you're involved in a task and you're just focused on doing it the best you can, that confidence tends to come more naturally because you're not concerned about what someone else is thinking, what someone else is judging. And if you don't do something correctly, you can do it over.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of good examples. What I love about the program is it has a structure to it so that I've done a lot of mindfulness practices, and over probably 20 years, a lot of different retreats and classes, but this is the one that has really made the impact for me because it has the mini practices throughout your day. And there's some great lessons in there too. One of them is about becoming a surfer. So for example, if life is, we could get pummeled by the waves if we're standing at the surf, or we could change our perspective and decide to become a surfer. You think about a surfer, they're not saying, oh, these waves are so terrible, they keep knocking me down. They say, oh, that was a great wave. Let me catch the next one. So when you can shift your perspective, you recognize that you get to learn how to surf.
Yeah, that's something that's very important. Perspective is very valuable. You can either ride the wave or you can get knocked over by it, but it really is your choice. And I'll interject a little science for our listeners. Your brain basically works on neural impulses. It's a little flash of electricity that goes through your brain, and that is an action, something you see. When you do something repetitively, the pathway that electrical impulse takes becomes easier and easier for that impulse to go through. It's like wearing down a path. If you go in your backyard, if you walk the same path, you'll notice that, it'll cut through the grass, the path will form, and it's easier to follow that path. Confidence works the same way. It's that electrical impulse that says, yes, I can do this. I don't have a problem with it. And like you said, you've got the mini exercises during the day that all cause that impulse to repeat over and over again. And the more you repeat it, the easier it becomes. So the more you do these exercises, the more confident you become.
Yes. And as you begin to, one of the big practices in the program is self-empathy. Because as you start recognizing the inner critic, and if you want to cultivate the confidence, you want to calm the inner critic, you need a ton of self-empathy. And there's a big focus on that. But when you have self-empathy, you can also have empathy for others. So you're just cultivating this love, basically, that Chip speaks of. And another thing that we talk about too is that everything can be seen as a gift or an opportunity. And when we're in the midst of it, it's probably a little bit easier to see it as an opportunity. You might not see the gift just yet, but we all have examples in our life where we look back and go, that seems so terrible. And in hindsight, that actually worked out better than I could have imagined.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the fact of the matter is, everything we go through, every obstacle, every opportunity, every tragedy, every fantastic experience, all of that makes us the people we are. And if we didn't go through that, we'd be somebody else. So we have to be grateful even for the challenges because they make us who we are.
Right. Several years ago, or a few years back, I was working for an organization. I loved the company. I just had a really tough boss. And she, long story short, she really just wanted to find a way to get me out of the company. So, and I'm not really quite sure how that all happened. And I decided, you know what, this is bullying and I'm going to leave the company. And it turns out it was right in March when COVID started. And so I had, thankfully, I only had 6 weeks till I found another job and everything worked out well. But in that 6 week time, my dad got really sick. And it was the opportune time for me to go to Maine and to spend quality time with him, to nurse him, to help him. And then I flowed right into another job and had a great boss. Like everything just flowed. But it was amazing. It felt so hard, but there was a huge gift in there.
Certainly. I mean, you got to spend time with your father, and I'm sure he appreciated it greatly. So he saw the gift as well. And that goes to show, yes, you were doing what was best for you by leaving the company at that point, but you were also doing what turned out to be best for your father. So taking care of yourself, taking care of your own needs, that's a great example of how that doesn't equate to selfishness and it doesn't preclude taking care of others. And that's something I think a lot of people miss. They still think, oh, if I'm doing something for me, I'm just being selfish.
No,
Right.
got to replace those old mantras that the world tells us with what reality really is. And reality starts right here. And I always tell people that you'll know when you're doing something good for somebody, you'll feel it in your heart. There's nothing wrong with feeling it in your heart. Other people may think you're being arrogant and so on and so forth. But again, they were in their own courtrooms judging themselves and so on and so forth, and going through the same thing. So, I mean, it's really important that for people to realize, which is exactly what you're teaching, that your old habits are automatic negativity, worry, fear, regret about the past, I'm not worthy, and so on and so forth. And at any point in time, you can replace those with appreciation for the present moment, what's going on around you, nature, and so on and so forth. And most importantly, what's going on right inside of the heart of that person in the mirror. So it's just a shift, and that's all these different exercises that you're talking about are meant to bring people to what reality really is, because all these things about what's good and what's bad and so on and so forth, we as human beings created. God didn't give us language. We did. We created all that stuff ourselves just to figure things out. Nothing wrong with it, except we really get in big type trouble when we're doing that. So all we're doing here is with your coaching and so on is just putting things in perspective and really helping people to understand where they really are. So it is so much needed. So cool you're doing it.
Yeah, you said a word that really stuck with me was arrogance, because confidence without humility can show up as arrogance. So really it's the combination of the two, which I think is a really it's a good distinction to be able to say that as we grow our humility, we can grow our confidence. As we grow our confidence, we must grow our humility. Otherwise, it's just showing up as arrogance.
Yep.
Yeah. So, as I've been coaching a long time, and I always find as my clients grow, I get something out of that as well. As you're teaching confidence and as your clients are getting more confident, how is that affecting you?
Yeah, well, you're right. With coaching, we're learning together, right? As me and the client, because I don't want to show up with all their answers, but it allows me the space to recognize what's the gift in them, the gift in me. It's like this back and forth exchange. And what I like to call coaching is I get to create space for possibility. And we never exactly know what's going to show up, but I don't want to come and give people answers because that's diminishing their confidence. I want to help them unearth their own confidence and start to recognize their own greatness.
Yeah, I love that term, creating a space for possibility. Maybe I saw an interview the other day, two very successful people, and one of them was saying, well, yes, they're successful, but they're the exception. Most people can't do what they did. And the other person who was being interviewed said, no, that's a terrible message to send. Everybody can do what we did if you put in the work. Everybody has that same capability. And as I was watching this, I realized that when people are telling you, oh, the system is stacked against you, or not everybody can do this, it's because their ego needs to make themselves feel special. So they're saying this as, yes, I can do this because I'm special, but everybody can't do this. And that's a terrible message to be sending. And we really do need to impart the message that, yes, you can do what you put your mind to, and you can have the confidence to make this happen.
Yes, because when we recognize our inner critic where it's getting in the way, maybe it's, we're a stickler and we have to make sure everything's perfect, or we are hyper vigilant and we're afraid that the other shoe is going to drop, or we have a victim mentality. When we can start to move past those, just kind of quiet those voices, and then we can start to cultivate that confidence. But what I recognize when I talk to people about is, because I have clients, for example, that are VPs and other executives, and no matter how many accomplishments they have, they say, oh, I lack confidence. There's almost this imposter syndrome happening. And when I start to have that conversation, I say, well, are you a good parent? Oh, absolutely. Well, there's the confidence, right? Like, we all have confidence in something. We just tend to want to bulk it all together and say we lack confidence. But when we start to tease it apart, and that's what coaching is a great space for, we start to recognize that, oh, it's only in really certain areas of our life. And that's when we can start to put in the extra work to build the competence, to build the confidence. So it's nice that we can actually recognize we all have confidence already, that it was built into us.
I like that. All right, we are coming up on the end of our time. So if our listeners want to get more information on your program and engage you as a confidence coach, build their own confidence, how can they find out more?
Yeah, they can go to my website at www.innerfitnesscoaching.com. Again, that's innerfitnesscoaching.com. And they can even sign up. There's a link for a complimentary consultation if we want to do a sample coaching session and just discuss it, and even help you there's an assessment I can help with. It's called Discover Your Saboteurs, and not in the negative, but just in the way of bringing some of it to light.
Fantastic. Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway from this week?
I love the way we closed with the person saying, I lack confidence. I mean, Eric, you and I both teach networking and so on and so forth. We oftentimes go to networking meetings where somebody stands up for the first time and says, I'm nervous, or I lack confidence, and so on and so forth. The bottom line, what I tell them, as I said, until you said that to me, you are the only person that knew that. We know nothing about that. You know who you are, what you're doing, and nobody can do what you're doing. So saying that you lack confidence, and I'm sure you've had a lot of people who walk up to you and say they lack confidence, that, are you saying, what? Are you kidding? And so on and so forth. We talked about the inner critic, and you talked about creating space for possibility, which is what a confidence coach does. And basically, they still have to do the work. But what you are doing, what you're teaching them to do, is to guide themselves through the process with these positive mantras and mindfulness and so on and so forth, realizing that every single moment is an opportunity. And they also need to realize that what they think about themselves, nobody's thinking about. They're their own worst enemies. So as soon as you can get rid of that for that present moment, and it takes work to do that, you got most of the battle done. So as Monty Python always saying, always look on the bright side of life.
I love that. Yes, I think for me, the big takeaway is the fact that when you have confidence, and again, as you said, everybody has confidence in something. You can focus on that. You can focus on what you are confident in. And that helps take away stress, and it helps fight burnout because you're feeling yourself and you've stopped worrying what everybody else is thinking. How is this going to turn out? utilize that confidence, and that helps you be your best you. And I think that is just so important. So, Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you both. This is a lot of fun. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity.
You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every episode at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.